It's now
Lucky Dube was more than a musician. To millions across Africa and beyond, he was a messenger of hope, a prophet of unity, and a voice for the downtrodden. His music carried the rhythm of pain and the melody of liberation. He sang not just for South Africa, but for every soul that understood what it meant to struggle and dream of freedom. His voice transcended borders, languages, and generations, but behind the fame and the reggae rhythms was a man whose life would be cut short in the most tragic and senseless way. A man whose death would leave unanswered questions, unhealed wounds, and stories that were never fully told. Lucky Philip Dube was born on August 3, 1964, in Ermelo, a small town in South Africa's Mpumalanga province. His mother, Sarah, worked as a domestic helper, raising her children with love and discipline in the face of poverty. Lucky never knew his father. His mother had him at a young age and named him Lucky, because she considered his birth a blessing after years of hardship. Growing up under apartheid, Lucky witnessed firsthand the cruelty and division that defined South Africa during that time. As a young man, he was drawn to music, not as a career at first, but as a means of survival and expression. He joined a local Mbakanga band called the Love Brothers, performing traditional Zulu music that blended African rhythms with a touch of soul. But his life took a turn when he discovered reggae, the music of rebellion, consciousness, and identity. Through the words of Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, he found something that spoke directly to his soul. Reggae, he realized, was more than a sound. It was a movement. Lucky began experimenting with reggae in the early 1980s, despite opposition from record labels who believed it wouldn't sell in South Africa. They wanted him to stick with local pop styles, but Lucky refused to compromise his voice. His 1985 album, Rastas Never Die, was his first reggae record, and it was banned by the apartheid government soon after its release. The authorities saw it as a threat, a call for freedom disguised in melody, but that ban only fueled his determination. By the late 1980s, Lucky Dube had become the continent's most powerful reggae artist. His albums, Slave, Together as One, Prisoner, House of Exile, carried messages that resonated deeply with people who had lived under oppression and injustice. He sang about unity, love, and human dignity. To black South Africans, he was a beacon of hope. To the rest of the world, he was proof that reggae's heartbeat could thrive far beyond Jamaica. Despite his fame, Lucky remained a humble man. He avoided scandals, stayed close to his family, and kept his life grounded in simple principles. His music took him around the world, but home was always where his heart was, South Africa. Yet, ironically, it would also be the place where his life would end in one of the most heartbreaking acts of violence. It was the evening of October 18, 2007, in the Rosettenville suburb of Johannesburg. Lucky had just finished dropping off two of his children at his sister's house. He was driving his Chrysler 300C, a luxury car that drew attention on the darkened streets. Unknown to him, a group of young men had been watching. They were carjackers, roaming the area in search of a vehicle to steal. Their plan was simple: find a target, take the car, and disappear into the night. But that night, their target turned out to be South Africa's most beloved reggae star. As Lucky's car slowed down near a stop, the attackers struck. They surrounded his vehicle, weapons in hand. Witnesses later said he tried to reverse, perhaps to escape. Shots were fired. One bullet shattered the glass and hit him in the chest. The car rolled forward and came to a stop against a tree. His son, seated beside him, screamed for help. The attackers panicked, fled the scene, and vanished into the shadows, leaving behind a dying man who had spent his life preaching peace and love. When the police arrived, Lucky Dube was already gone. The news spread like wildfire. Across South Africa, disbelief turned into grief, and grief turned into anger. How could this happen? How could a man who gave so much to the world die in such a cruel and meaningless way? The nation mourned. Fans flooded radio stations with calls and messages. tributes poured in from around the world, from Jamaica to Nigeria, from Kenya to the Caribbean. His funeral drew thousands, including musicians, activists, and ordinary people who had found strength in his songs. Yet beneath the public mourning, there was a deeper sense of unease, a sense that not everything about his death was as simple as it seemed. At first, the official story was that Lucky Dube was killed in a carjacking gone wrong, a random act of violence in a country struggling with high crime rates. But soon, whispers began to circulate. Some believed his death had more layers, that it was not just a coincidence that a politically conscious artist, one who had long spoken out against corruption and inequality, was silenced just as South Africa was entering a new, uncertain era. Others dismissed the conspiracy theories, pointing to the young men arrested in connection with the murder. 3 suspects were captured after a police investigation traced the car and weapons used. In 2009, they were convicted of murder, hijacking, and possession of illegal firearms. They were sentenced to life in prison. The case was closed. Justice, at least officially, had been served. But many fans remained unsatisfied. To them, something still didn't add up. Why target a man like Lucky Dube? Why shoot him when he offered no resistance? Why such recklessness from men who, according to their testimonies, didn't even recognize who he was? Those close to Lucky recalled that he had received threats in the months before his death. Nothing specific, but enough to make him cautious. Some said he had grown increasingly disillusioned with the direction of the country he loved, a place still haunted by inequality and violence even after apartheid had ended. His later songs carried a darker tone, a sense of warning and sorrow. Tracks like The Way It Is and Respect spoke of betrayal, greed, and moral decay. There were also rumors that his outspoken lyrics and international influence had made him a target of those who disliked the image he projected, a proud African voice speaking uncomfortable truths. Whether these stories were true or just the desperate efforts of grieving fans to make sense of a senseless act, one thing was clear: his death left a void that could never be filled. Lucky's family withdrew from the spotlight after his passing. His children continued his legacy quietly, keeping his music alive. His mother, Sarah, was devastated. She had survived the hardships of apartheid, only to bury the son she once called Lucky. In interviews, she spoke little, her pain too deep to express in words. Over the years, many tributes have been made in his honor. Statues, concerts, documentaries, all celebrating the life of a man who believed in love, unity, and respect for humanity. But beneath the celebrations lies a constant reminder of how fragile life can be, and how violence can steal away even the purest souls. For South Africa, Lucky Dube's death became more than a tragedy. It became a symbol of the country's ongoing struggle with crime, inequality, and moral erosion. He was not just a victim, he was a mirror, reflecting the society that raised and lost him. The same nation that once produced leaders like Nelson Mandela also produced the young men who took Lucky's life, men shaped by poverty, desperation, and anger. The irony is haunting. Lucky Dube sang of peace and unity, but died at the hands of his own people. He sang of freedom, but his death reminded many that true freedom goes beyond the end of apartheid. It requires the transformation of hearts and minds. His songs, like Different Colors, One People, still echo that message. Today, nearly 2 decades after his death, his legacy continues to inspire. New generations discover his music on streaming platforms, finding in his words the same truth that moved listeners in the 1980s and 1990s. His voice still speaks against oppression, injustice, and division. His message remains timeless, and yet the question lingers: what was the true meaning of Lucky Dube's death? Was it a random tragedy or a reflection of deeper societal wounds? Perhaps both. Perhaps his death was not only the loss of a man, but a wake-up call for a nation losing its moral compass. Those who knew him best describe him as gentle, disciplined, and deeply spiritual. He believed that music could heal. In one interview, he said, "If I can change one person's mind through my songs, then I have done my job." By that measure, he did far more than his job. He changed millions. Even now, his words carry a haunting power. When he sang, "One love, one heart, one destiny, he wasn't just quoting a reggae slogan, he was expressing a philosophy that guided his life. The tragedy of his death lies in how violently that philosophy was betrayed. Still, Lucky Dube's story does not end with his death. His music remains a living testament to his ideals. Every time his songs play, in a taxi in Johannesburg, at a wedding in Lagos, in a cafe in Kingston, his spirit lives on. His message continues to challenge and comfort, to remind listeners that love and humanity must prevail over hate and greed. The untold truth behind Lucky Dube's tragic death may not be found in court records or police reports. It may lie instead in the lessons his loss revealed, about society, about violence, about the cost of forgetting our shared humanity. In the end, Lucky Dube's life was both a gift and a warning, a reminder of how much beauty can come from struggle, and how easily that beauty can be destroyed when the world forgets to listen. For those who still mourn him, his music is a form of resurrection. Each lyric, each chord, each heartbeat of the drum brings him back to life, if only for a few minutes. And in those moments, Lucky Dube is not gone. He is singing still, of love, of unity, of peace, urging a broken world to heal.